All right, so in this Defeating Adventism, I'm going to do something a little different than I've done on the most previous videos where I've shown points of disagreement with celebrity Adventist teachers. Actually, in this one, I'm going to agree with the celebrity Adventist teacher, Mark Finley. While I may not agree with him in all points in the video that we're going to look at in a minute, I do agree with him on a few, I think, key points. Let's look with me here on screen. This is the video we're going to look at. Can the dead speak to the living? You can see on the very bottom, August 13th, 2021. And you can see the video is just under 24 minutes long. So in this video, Mark Finley is going to explain to the viewer how talking with the dead is not biblical and it's spiritually dangerous. Absolutely, I agree with Mark Finley. Let's watch Mark Finley address. First clip, we're going to do 3 clips. First clip is about 1 minute and 17 seconds where he's going to kind of lay the foundation for why it is wrong to even think about communicating with the dead. Watch with me here.
But what does the Bible say about spiritualism? What does the Bible say about death? Can the dead communicate with the living? Is it possible for once a person has died to come back to their house again and speak to their loved ones? And what will the ultimate result of the devil's deception of spiritualism be in the light of the last days of Earth's history? Let's jump right into our topic, based on the Bible. I love that old poem, What Says the Bible, the Blessed Bible to Me? The teachings of men so often mislead me, but what says the Bible, the Blessed Bible to me? First thing that we want to set out very clearly is that once a person dies, it is impossible for that individual to communicate with the living. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 5, for the living know that they will die. What do the living know? What does every living human being know? It knows that they will die. But the dead know nothing. How much do the dead know? The Bible says the dead know nothing. Not one thing, as we'd say in Spanish, nada. They know nothing. For they have no more reward. The memory of them is forgotten. Their love, their hatred, their envy, these are emotions have now perished.
Note that he said, can someone who is dead come back to their house and speak to someone that's alive? That's a rhetorical question on his part because he believes the answer is no. Because what's he do? He quotes Ecclesiastes 9:5. The dead know nothing. Very famous Adventist text, which probably will be a topic of a future video. In terms of soul sleep and the Adventist theology, but that's not the topic here, and that will not be addressed in the comments here. We'll save that for later, Adventist friends. But you know what he does also in this 1 minute 17 second clip? He calls this the devil's deception of spiritualism. So if you're alive and you think you're talking to a loved one, it's the devil's deception of spiritualism. Now, we're going to look at another clip. This is 2 minutes and 22 seconds. He's going to take us back to a time where he was in the Philippines given a talk. And he's going to relate a story to us of a Philippine military guy who encounters a dead loved one at night in his sleep. Let's watch that and listen to that story with me here.
One night I was preaching in the Philippines and a typhoon came and it was dark and the wind was blowing, water was flowing through the streets and rain was pelting down. And we were to have a meeting that night and I went to the auditorium, made our way there, but a few people were in this darkened auditorium. I had to dismiss them and go home. I was preaching, in fact, on the millennium, 1,000 years of darkness. And I said, we can't have the meeting tonight. And they said, Pastor, we have to have it because you announced the topic 1,000 years of darkness, and we think it began tonight. I assured them that it didn't, but I spoke shortly, sent them home. The next night or two after the meeting, one of the participants in the meeting came to me. He had been in the Philippine Army. He was a ranking officer, in fact, in the Philippine Army. And he came to me and he said, Pastor Mark, let me tell you this story. You remember the other night when the typhoon came? Yeah, I sure do. He said, I was sleeping. The wind was blowing, rattling the windows in my house, rattling the house. And he said, I woke up. Now, his wife had died some years before. And he said, I woke up and I looked up and I saw the form of my wife, young, no wrinkles, beautiful. And she reached out her arms and she was coming toward me. And as I saw her, she called me, she beckoned and come, hug me. She said, I looked up And I remembered, Pastor Mark, what you said. I remembered what the Bible said. The living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything. The dead cannot return to their house, Job 7. We shall wait and sleep until the resurrection, Job 14. And he said, when I saw that form of my wife, he said, I cried out, Jesus, Jesus, this is not my wife. This is a demon. This is an evil spirit masquerading as my wife. In the name of Christ, be gone. And he said, Pastor Mark, the form of my wife turned to a hideous demon and disappeared. Knowing what the Bible says protects us from the wiles of Satan and the deceptions of Satan.
So you just saw here in this clip where the Philippine military guy he counted his dead wife. And he said, then he remembered, he told Mark Finley, I remembered what you said. The dead know nothing. And then he cried out what? Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And he said, what? This is not my wife. This is a demon. This is an evil spirit masquerading as my wife. He said, in the what? In the name of Christ, be gone. And then what's he say in the story? The demon changed from the beautiful form of his wife into a hideous creature. Mark Finley called this story the wiles of Satan and the deception of Satan. So recap. He calls the apparition of somebody from the dead communicating with somebody that's alive the wiles of Satan and deceptions of Satan. And I don't disagree with him. Now in this very last clip, which is only 26 seconds long and near the very end of the video, he's going to summarize his position on can the dead talk with the living. Let's watch this 26-second clip.
God says, if you want to keep from being deceived in the last days of Earth's history, number one, know what the Bible says about death. That death is but a rest, that the dead can't return to their house, that the devil can masquerade as dead loved ones. 2 Corinthians 11:14, he is masquerading at times as an angel of light. So he tries to deceive through spiritualism.
All right, notice what he said. To keep from being deceived, he said the dead cannot return. The devil will masquerade as loved ones. See, it's not your loved ones, it's the devil masquerading. And then what's he do in this video? I think he quotes a very appropriate Bible verse, 2 Corinthians 11:14, where he essentially says, and I'm going to show you the whole verse at the end of this video, that the devil will masquerade as dead loved ones, as an angel of light to deceive. So how does all of this pertain to Ellen White? We're going to look at a letter from Ellen White in this book here called The Retirement Years. You can also find the same letter in Manuscript Releases, Volume 10. I'll get everything else. All the other notes are below in the show notes. Let's look at this book here. Retirement Years. There's the title page. Copyrighted in 1990. And we have here what? Ellen dreams of James shortly after his death. We're going to look at 3 pages here in this book, which is this letter written in 1881. And Ellen White says what? A few days since, I was pleading with the Lord for light in regard to my duty. In the night, I dreamed. Okay, we're going to stop right here because I know what would happen if I was to continue. You Seventh-day Adventists would say, well, this is just a dream. Don't you have dreams? Don't you have funny, wacky dreams? Yeah, we all do, don't we? But we're all not Ellen White. So this is different. This is your prophet. I'm going to now show you a number of quotes from this book. And I know you can't read it on screen because my cover is faded here. So let's look on screen. And you can see the book that I was holding here in my hands is the book by Francis Nichol, Ellen G. White and Her Critics, Review and Herald Publishing. Very famous book. Adventists like to use it all the time. Let's look on page 87 of that book. So what does Francis Nichol do for us? He goes to James White, and very early on in the Advent movement, he quotes James White. He says, one of the earliest subjects on which James White wrote was that of her visions. And he says, here are his words in 1847, and if we were to look on page 88, we would see that this is a word to the little flock. That's the citation. So the last group of underlines says this, but this is no reason why God may not show the past present, and future fulfillment of his word in these last days by dreams and visions, according to Peter's testimony. We see dreams and visions right there together with each other. No difference. Let's look on page 59. It says what? Right in the very middle. It's evident also that the prophets used interchangeably the words dreams and visions. And you can look above. The prophets are what? In this case, he's talking about the prophet Daniel. He's not talking about Ellen White yet. Now we're going to look at the next one on page 56, where we do talk about Ellen White. And she has a night vision. And that, in the end of that night vision is what you see at the top of the page there on page 56. But what does he say on the two lines, underlined in red? He says this: in describing these experiences, she sometimes uses the word vision and sometimes uses the word dreams. So just as the prophets, as you saw earlier in the book, Daniel, use interchangeably dreams and visions, we see here in the Francis Nichol book that Ellen White, well, she's equivalent to the biblical prophets, as the Advent Review and Herald magazine tells us, and so she does the same thing Daniel does. She uses dreams and visions interchangeably. Ta-da! Let's look at a number of magazine issues now. I probably could have quoted 15, 20, 25, 30 of these, but I think I put, 5 or 6 in here. Let's look at them. Let's look at the first one. April 21st, 1851, page 70. It says, finally we see that the outpouring of the Spirit, the gift of prophecy and dreams and visions of the Lord, are to be sufficiently remarkable to constitute signs of the second advent. You see that? Dreams and visions. No distinction between the two. That quote was so good they did it again in 1919, this time on page 11 in their Review and Herald. Let's look at this one here, this Review and Herald, March 23rd, 1961, page 10. Now we get Ellen White talking about, I bet you didn't know there's 3 kinds of dreams. So look at this whole section here that I've got excerpted in the middle of the page. So the question naturally arises as to the likelihood of mistaking the ordinary dream of sleep from one divinely introduced. Excellent point. Ellen G. White, it goes on to say, had no question about any such confusion. She recognized 3 kinds of dreams. And look at the blue text. Common dreams, demonic dreams, or dreams inspired of God. Then it says what? She held that the divine dream contains its own proof of genuineness, taking into account the character of the person having it and the circumstances under which it was given. 3 kinds of dreams. But if it's from God, then it's why it's the circumstances, of course. Let's look at 1982. Like the biblical prophets, she at times received divine messages through dreams and visions. See, no distinction between the two. Let's go to 1996 before we go back to the Retirement Years book. It's estimated that she had about 2,000 visions and prophetic dreams. There we go again. Dreams and, they're same. In Ellen White's mind, dreams, visions, communication from God to her, period. That's what this means. Then the very last section here, it says what? She received dreams and visions throughout her ministry. Here we are again. No distinction between the two, as Francis Nichol accurately told us. Let's go back to the retirement years, where Ellen had her dream. And in this dream, you know what happened? An apparition of James White showed up. James White said, and Ellen White said, Ellen White called him Father. That was a little pet nickname. I'm so happy to have you here by my side. James White shows up to her in this dream at night. Let's look at the next paragraph, or the bottom of this one. And she says, oh, has the Lord pitied me to let you come back to me again, and we can work together just as we used to. So here she is. She sees her loved ones, like that Philippine commander. And her heart's excited. Oh, we can work together again. Let's look at the next paragraph. Bottom of the page. This is James White. He looked very sad. He said, the Lord knows what is best for you and me. And in the next section of lines, these meetings have worn us both more than we are aware. He's talking about how the meetings and all their busy travel schedule just physically wore them out. Well, no doubt that it did. Let's look at the next page, 162. Now Ellen calls will be made. Now this is James White telling her. He's actually telling her what's going to happen in the future. Calls will be made, and and they have been, desiring you to attend important meetings as have been the case in the past, but lay this matter before God and make no response to the most earnest invitation. Your life hangs upon a thread. Is he telling her she keeps this busy schedule up, she's going to die? Is he giving her a prophetic warning of death should she keep her busy schedule? And then he goes on to tell her, you know what? You can do far more with your pen than with your voice. He's actually telling her, retire from your busy itinerary of travel and use your pen. Let's look at the next paragraph, same page 162. He looked at me appealingly and said, you will not neglect these cautions, will you, Ellen? See, James is actually telling Ellen White what to do. And then we jump down to the bottom here. We ought to have gone to the Pacific coast before and devoted our time and energies to writing. Will you do this now? In other words, leave Michigan, go to California, where we can rest in Healdsburg, or maybe even Loma Linda. I don't know exactly what he's referring to, but rest there and get rid of the busy travel schedule. And then he goes on to say what? This. Well, said I, James, you are always to stay with me now and we will work together. That's kind of creepy. Well, said I, James, you are always to stay with me now? Isn't he? He's dead. But yet she's saying he's going to stay with me now. Just creepy. All right, let's go to the very end of the letter. And she says what? I have no duty to stand in the general conference. The Lord forbids me. You know what she just did? She took the advice of her dead husband appearing to her because now she said the Lord forbid me. So now the Lord forbid me, she's interpreting this as a divine dream from God. The Lord forbid me from her busy travel schedule. Now she's not going to do that anymore. She's not going to go to the general conference. She's going to retire and use her pen. She's not going to be traveling anymore. So what we have here is Ellen White in a dream or vision, doesn't matter, they're interchangeably to her because they're from God, conversing with her dead husband, James White. You know, Mark Finley and I agree on this fact. Communication with the dead is spiritualism and it's not biblical. Period. Mark Finley has condemned Ellen White in that 24-minute video that I showed you the screenshot of, because we have Ellen White communicating with the dead, in this case her dead husband. And her dead husband is telling her what to do now and some things that may even happen to her in the future as she gets invitations to attend things. Ellen White is plainly engaged in good old-fashioned, unbiblical spiritualism. That's it. So SDA, your spirit of prophecy is in error, believing her dream of talking to her dead husband and getting directions on what to do for the rest of her life from her dead husband is in error and not from God. Because what is God saying? I'm gonna show you the whole verse now that Mark Finley quoted from 2 Corinthians 11:12 through 15. You can see verses 14 and 15 are underlined. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it's no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Let's wrap it up here. Ellen White was either deceived by an angel of light, which I think she was, or she was speaking a heart's desire, but then claiming it was from God. Either one of those two scenarios are absolutely wrong and unbiblical. And again, we have clear proof in a letter she wrote in 1881 why she is not a prophet of God and she is a false teacher. But in this case, in the letter in this book, your prophet, Seventh-day Adventism, is talking to her dead husband and communicating with the dead. She is engaged in spiritualism.